Hey, what's up guys? This is Greg from Asus ROG, and we're coming to you live from our new ROG studios. And of course, joining me for this live stream is JJ, who you've probably seen in some of our other videos.
Yeah, I'm really excited to be here. We're here to talk about Asus Aura Sync and all things RGB.
Exactly. So if you guys missed it, we built this system in a couple of other videos. We have the links for those in the description below. It's a two-part build. The first part, we go through all of the internal components and the build process. And the second part, we'll go through all the peripherals, because not only do the internal components work with Aura Sync, but also the peripherals.
Yeah, it's pretty sweet. You guys should definitely check it out. It's a pretty much up-to-date build, so if you're also just wanted to find out about what's an up-to-date HN system look like, definitely a cool build to check out.
Awesome. But this video is all about the Aura Sync software. So why don't we go ahead and get into that? JJ, why don't you just take us through the software and show us what it's all about?
Sure. First up, just for those of you, if you haven't seen me before, you know, Greg, you handle a lot of the video content. Sometimes you see me kind of pop up, but I'm very active throughout the community, so I kind of work with our product management team, give feedback, and I'm really excited to be able to kind of give you guys a guided walkthrough about everything we're doing with Asus Aura Sync. So, and going here into the Asus Aura software, you're going to first see that the entire UI has kind of been updated. It's been revamped. We've gone into kind of not necessarily version 2.0, although I think actually the version might actually be listed version 2.0 at this stage.
Yeah, it definitely looks new. I did a video about Aura Sync last year when Z270 came out, and just looking at the UI right now, it's completely different.
Yep.
A lot more options on there.
Yeah, the goal really when we went about redesigning the software was trying to make it, one, more flexible in terms of the level of control that you had available to you, more intuitive, as well as overall just kind of streamlining the whole experience in terms of how you manage and control all the different devices. So first and foremost, when we jump into the actual application interface, you're going to see the kind of the dashboard, right? And so at the top of this dashboard, you're going to see all the different devices that are available to you in terms of Asus Aura Sync. And this is, I think, what's really probably most impressive at this state. You're pretty much talking about every single key component that you could have not only internally in a system, but even externally in a system, right?
Yeah, definitely.
So here you can see we've got the motherboard, the graphics card, the keyboard, the mouse, DRAM, microphone, the display. That's very impressive, right? Yeah. Brand new with our latest generation of monitors. And then from there, the strip. Now, you do want to keep in mind that the strip is a little bit ambiguous in the regard that this is not just applied to the strip. Asus Aura, in terms of the expansion, the way it works is through that strip interface, through the actual header that's on the motherboard, both for addressable and for our traditional 4-pin cables. So that's going to cover everything from, you know, your fans, potentially chassis that have integrated lighting. So when you make an adjustment to something that quote unquote says strip, it could also apply to all the devices you have connected to that header.
Okay, awesome.
So from there, if we take a look, you're going to see that you've got a couple of different tabs in terms of how you can go about actually making your adjustments. So before we actually jump into the synchronization, I think it's important to kind of preface that we have gone ahead and looked at some other items under, let's say, settings. And so this gets into kind of just the usability and making things a little bit more, hopefully more streamlined. So users do have the option to run calibration. This is going to be useful sometimes depending on the different chassis or the LED strips that they're using, or maybe devices that are uncertified.
Right, so if you're trying to use something that's not on our official or certification list, and it's not working right, you can come in here and kind of troubleshoot problems and try to get it to work.
Exactly. So you can click on the button. It'll go through a little nice step-by-step process. It'll ask you, hey, what color do you see? Click on the color, and it'll set that output information to there, and then hopefully it should be all synchronized, and you can get your whole lit-up sequence all set to go.
Awesome.
Once you've gone ahead and done that, you're good to go in terms of now jumping into the presets. Now, before we jump into that, though, I do want to make a note that in terms of the overall continuity of this experience, it has also been streamlined. In the first generation version of the software, if you rebooted your system or shut down your system, you lost your settings.
Right.
That's no longer the case. Now you fully maintain these settings when the system reboots. It'll take a moment, of course, for the Aura software in the background, the service, to get up and started. But once it does, everything will come back into play and you'll be good to go.
Right, so saves your settings, so whatever you set it on when you go to bed the night before, it'll be there when you wake up in the morning.
Exactly, you're good to go. And you don't even have to bother with doing any kind of like profiles or saves or anything like that. It's all done in real time. So once you hit the apply button, it pretty much writes that information directly in your set.
Awesome. Well, yeah, let's go ahead and start taking a look at some of these modes here. We've got plenty of modes here to choose from, so let's just see what we can do here.
Yeah, so the first one is going to, I'd say, be kind of the most consistent. This is probably the most popular option and the option that most users that make adjustments are going to select, and that's going to be static. So under static, if we head over to the color section, you're going to have two options. One's going to be single color, and the other one's going to be area. But right now, let's focus here on the single color. So this is pretty cool because I can just quickly go ahead and just select the color. Now here we have probably the most popular colors. So you've got red, you've got green, and you've got blue. So if we want to go ahead and go to the classic ROG red and black,
red.
We can go ahead and select that. And once we've gone ahead and selected that, every single item is going to sequence through, and it's now going to be set to red. But some of the cool things that we've added over is more granularity and control on how you can manipulate these values. So classically, in let's say the first version, you'd have to use just this kind of this wheel, and you would select what color you wanted, right? The disadvantage of that is it's maybe sometimes not as specific or as accurate as you want.
Like if you're trying to match something, another product or a logo or something that you have on your screen in the background, you want to be able to be exact.
Exactly. You want to be able to be consistent. So now you can see that as we go through, we make our selections, we still maintain that option, but you're also going to actually get this hue number. Now you can manually key in the hue number if you want, but you're also going to have the individual RGB values. Now it's important to keep in mind that this type of granularity control is very useful because it's not always going to be consistent between all the RGB enabled devices. Different LEDs have different levels of fidelity, like you talked about previously. So that just gives you more flexibility in terms that depending on whether it's maybe a device that only supports hundreds of colors versus thousands or even millions of colors, you can go in there and try to find the right approximate value to make everything kind of complementary to each other.
So you can have two RGB peripherals from different manufacturers that are maybe calibrated differently, but using the software here, you can make sure that you can get them really close to exact.
Exactly, or maybe create maybe a more pleasing kind of contrast or proximity value, right? And to go along with that, you have saturation and brightness. So this is really nice because I can go and I can pull things down. Of course, if I pull the entire value down, you're eventually going to get down to white, which, hey, you know, sometimes white is really cool. If you just don't want any colors, you can entirely go that route. And then brightness is really cool, especially when you start maybe playing around with a little bit more kind of ambient lighting. Sometimes maybe you want a little bit of an underfill light or maybe a top head light, or maybe you want to even use two of the same color, but you want maybe one to be brighter and bolder and the other one to be a little bit softer. So it's a cool way to be able to play around with different kind of looks and feels in your system. Now, where I think things get really interesting though, and where you can kind of really take it to the next level and you see the depth of what's offered, not only in the software, but of course from the partners, is when we go to areas. So when we go to areas, and now we click in this, we're going to see a huge number of options.
So this is pretty much all of our components, and then if the component has addressable LEDs, those individual LEDs are listed.
So there is a difference between addressable LEDs and also just kind of a controllable set of LED values. But either which way, depending on the device, if it has essentially multiple LEDs that can be controlled, you'll see those as multiple values. So take for instance on the motherboard, this one has 4 LEDs. Or on our G-Skill.
On the back I/O cover, right? So they're listed as back I/O. So each one of those is individually controllable.
On this one, actually, I believe on this board, I think you also got the side profile lighting on there. So you got also that's available to you. And on the G-Skill Trident Z RGB memory, it's actually got 5 zones. So take for instance, if I want to jump into the DRAM, I can go onto DRAM 1, and let's say maybe I want to have that green, right? In your holiday build, you rocked, of course, that classic green and red, right? So let's say I want to go in and make that customization. I can go back, and so the DRAM has been set to red. Now I want to set maybe the second value to green. I can go there and set that to green. So you can go in. I really like doing that, especially with memory like this, where I can kind of keep the top zone at kind of one color and then the bottom zone to another color.
You can go in and just individualize it however you want to do it.
Exactly.
You can even individualize the different memory sticks. So you could have one color and one the other.
Exactly. You could alternate. Lots of really, really cool flexibility, a lot of value in there. And so you can see all you got to do is just scroll down, pick your different devices, and you're good to go. And so also this is how you would be able to synchronize, let's say, those connected devices to those headers. So things like the fans, if you sequence in all your fans would be able to be controlled and you'd be good to go. Or if you had a chassis that had integrated lighting, that's how your chassis would also be adjusted.
Nice. Okay, so let's move on to the next one here. So breathing. So this is pretty similar. Let's set it all to
we'll go back to our
red,
our
so we
classic
can,
red.
So we can see the breathing function. So it kind of just breathes in and out.
So this is, I think, a kind of really classic scheme. A lot of people really like this kind of this soft in and out for the system. You know, it just, I think, gives it a little bit kind of more lively feel to it. And of course, you have that flexibility. Adjust the color, the hue, the saturation, the brightness. Totally up to you. Very, very, very flexible.
It has all the same settings as static.
Exactly. Where things get a little bit more different, of course, is going to be when we go into rainbow. So by default, actually, when you go into rainbow, you're going to see color cycle. So this is going to be pretty much similar to the default color cycle, but you've got more flexibility and control here.
Color cycle is an option, and that's how we started the video with. But there's you can't adjust it. So rainbow is kind of like color cycle for pros who want to go in and adjust it. So what exactly can we do in here?
So the first one is we can do reverse polarity, so which that's really cool because that just changes up the look. You kind of don't expect that, and so when your eye sees that, it's going to already look different. So we can go ahead and set that into play. We also have control on the sequence. The sequence is really cool because depending on the size of your system, the different type of components and the number of the components you have in your system, it's cool to be able to play around with the kind of what's that chain in terms of how that actually flows into each other. And this is where you can make your system look really distinctive.
Yeah, so you could do like start with the RAM and then motherboard, fans, and RGB strips, so it kind of has a different pattern. So
exactly.
You can really play around with it and just try a lot of different things.
Exactly, totally flexible. And then speed, you know, we can go ahead and crank this up. We'll just go to fast. This is going to be a lot faster than I would really like in terms of my system. You know, some people, they might really enjoy that, but for me, I prefer, I think, a kind of a slow, more methodical shift in terms of the color palette. So I would go the opposite. I would drop it all the way down and have this really nice kind of clean transition, kind of ebb and flow. I think that also works really well with the way that we do our RGB lighting and devices because we use diffusion on a lot of our products. So you tend to kind of have that softer look, which I think looks really nicely kind of when you slow it down.
Definitely.
So we're going to pull off that reverse. And
let's go back to color cycle.
We'll leave it on the color cycle there. But now where things get really interesting is, of course, you can even take this even further. You can go with a gradient. So this is really cool because it's extending it to that just next level. What you can do now is have a more defined transition essentially with a certain set of colors that you want.
So you can set up like, hey, I just want it to go from green to blue to purple, and that's it. Then you can just have it set there, and that's all you have.
Exactly. So I really actually like that combination that you talked about. So here you can see instead of maybe having it go all the way into red, we'll pull it in and we'll kind of set it to peak out at kind of that pink, right? Transition through that purple. And then go all the way into that nice blue, maybe even go into a little bit of a softer kind of blue. That's a really interesting value. And so you can, of course, still continue to play around with the sequence if you want to be able to make those adjustments. Maybe we'll bump it up a little bit more just to see that transition a little bit, and you can click that. And you're able to make those adjustments. So those four, I think, values when you look at static, breathing, color cycle, and rainbow, probably for, I think, the 99% of users, this is probably going to cover you really, really well. But you know, beyond that, we still offer other options like Comet, Flash and Dash, Wave, a lot of real granular options, you know, for users that want to maybe a little bit more kind of specialized look and feel.
Yeah, I went through a couple of those in another video. What's Flash and Dash? Why don't we just turn that on just to show them real quick?
Yeah. So this is going to be quite a bit more stark in terms of kind of sequencing through the different.
So it's just kind of like one after the other.
Yeah, it sequences through, and you can entirely adjust all of that. You can make those customizations. But where I things get interesting, though, is I think when you talk about functionality, it's not just, of course, about the aesthetics.
It's not just for show. It's not just to look pretty, right?
Exactly. There might be some people out there that actually want to go about and have their system actually be useful in different ways. And so here you can jump into something like the temperature mode. So this is cool because it actually reflects actually two different values. One, you've got CPU temperature. So you get two target zones in terms of you can help to define the temperature points.
So as it gets up to 40 degrees, how it's set now, then it will turn yellow.
Correct.
And then if it surpasses 60 degrees Celsius, it'll turn red.
Exactly.
So just try to notify you, hey, your CPU is getting hot. So your whole system is going to turn red, you'll know.
You'll know. Now, I find, because probably in most situations when you probably built your system, you know what your temperature ranges are. I find the actual next one even quite a bit more useful, which is going to be CPU load-in. And that's because sometimes you might not necessarily be aware of what's going on with your system and how much it might be using for your system. So if you're kind of a power user, you've got tons of different applications open, you're switching back and forth, you can go ahead and select this option, and then your system will actually light up based on the load that you have on your system.
So you know, hey, I'm rendering a video, I'm editing over here, I got Photoshop open. This is probably only specific to me and maybe a couple other people, but
you never know. Well, you got those multitaskers out there. Plus, you know, sometimes, you know, we get bugs in systems. You get different applications that eat up resources. You've got, let's say, 40 tabs in certain browsers. You know, there's those. So those of you out there that are like that, just gives you a little bit more flexibility to know what's going on in your system.
Definitely.
But in a nice, easy visual way with your lighting.
Definitely.
Now the last one I think is pretty cool. It's not, again, for everybody out there, but I think some people that kind of, when you really get everything nicely set up, like kind of this cool system setup that we've got here, sometimes you want to be able to play around and have it kind of extend beyond that. You know, we're not always just gaming on our system. We're listening to music, we're watching videos, we're looking at movies. You know, a lot of different things when you talk about kind of the audio experience that we're looking for on a system, right?
Right. So this mode, it basically, if you're going to be listening to music, let's say you have some people over and you got a ton of AuraSync enabled products on your system, you want to turn this on, play some music, and the lights go to the music.
Exactly. So what we can do right here is we've got a video. We're just going to pop over to it, and we're just going to go to normal. Now keep in mind that we've got a wide range of different options, and what we've done essentially with those different options is we're monitoring different parts of kind of the frequency curve or the spectrum, right, for music, because like, you know, EDM is going to be different from rock, and that's going to be different from jazz, and so you're going to get kind of different pickup patterns. But normal, we're going to leave it on, is pretty good for like voice and for most music in general. Okay. So we'll go ahead and set it to that, and we're going to play our track, and we're going to see that essentially it's dynamic and it reacts to it. So it kind of gives us a cool different vibe to our system. And you know, pro tip for those of you out there that take your desk setups seriously and you kind of want to do a cool vibe to your system, on builds that, especially on our boards like this board that has multiple headers, what I've done before is I run an extra long cable out through one of the actual open PCIe slot brackets. I leave that open, and you can kind of just tape that directly underneath your desk or your table or something like that, and now you've got some nice kind of perimeter lighting just like we've got here on the set.
And so you can control the desk lighting with the Aura Sync software.
Exactly.
So we got to do that on this one over here. So
I think that would be
pretty stay late today. We'll set that up.
We can definitely go that route. So you know, that gives you a lot of different choices, but that kind of runs through all, I'd say, the key parameters in terms of what you have available. But like we said, we're consistently working on updating it, so you always want to make sure and check back to the support site, see if there's a new build out there, you know, uninstall the old one, put the new one in there, and see, you know, what else and other enhancements we brought over.
Definitely, awesome. Well, I think we hit pretty much everything, but I have some questions from the audience here on the tablet. So we asked these on social media, basically, what do you want to know about Aura Sync? So the first question is, how has the Aura Sync software been updated recently? Basically, what's new? We kind of covered that a little bit, but is there anything else we can add to it?
No, but you know, just recap. You know, one, we've got more granularity and control, so you can dial in color values, you can control saturation, you can control brightness, right? You're going to have more targeted control, and also in general, I think the reliability and stability of the application is significantly improved. So some of you out there, when you were first trying it out, maybe you might have seen a little bit more reliability issues. You know, it was the teething pain of being on the bleeding edge. You know, we've got a much more mature product at this point.
Definitely, and also one that I've heard a complaint before that you mentioned earlier is that you can save your settings. So you you set it all up, close it down, shut the computer down the next day, it's going to be
just how you don't have to worry about making any adjustments, reapplying any values. It's going to be there right when you restart your system.
Okay, so here's a very specific one. And does Aura Sync support synchronized fan lighting?
Yeah, so that was probably, I think, maybe right up there, like right up with save settings. It was like #1 or #2. So this is a combination of both the software and the hardware. So we have outstanding partners like Cooler Master. We've got fans in here right here that fully support Asus Aura Sync. But you know, if you jump over here to the Aura Sync website, you can see if we head over into different sections that are broken down. So like we've got cooling, we can scroll through here, and you're going to see that we've got tons of different partners that are now producing fully certified Aura certified fans. So that means, you know, whether it's Team Group, Xigmatech, Bitphoenix, you know, there's tons of partners that are out there. There's even really cool frames. So even if you have like old fans and you don't want to spend money to get all full custom Aura fans, right? You can actually just get a frame from Silverstone and from Fantex. Put them on top of the actual fan, and now you've got lighting. So you know, we've got
just add RGB frames on
there.
That's cool. I have not heard of that before.
Interface that in, and you're good to go.
Nice. Well, speaking of, since we're on the website, looking at some of the other components here, there was another question that was recommended cases for Aura Sync. So I know on our website, we've got a bunch of cases listed that will plug right in. And we used, of course, the Cooler Master here.
This is a really nice chassis because, of course, the way that the fans and the open view design, and of course the side panel, it gives you really great kind of visible perimeter lighting. But there's a lot of choices out there. You know, you got companies like Inwin, you got Fantex, you got Bitphoenix, you know, Thermaltake, a lot of different partners out there. You can go again to the site. You can see all the different choices. But at the same time, you know, you can easily go ahead and make any chassis, of course, have quote-unquote lighting by just adding in an LED strip in there.
An LED strip or the LED fans or those fan, what were they called?
The fan controllers or the fan grills. Yeah,
the fan grills. So just a grill on your fan of your existing case. And that's really cool.
And I will note, for those of you that are in the kick to get the latest and the greatest, we now have partners that are releasing addressable chassis lighting, which is built in. So yeah, they're even the latest in generation lighting is now present.
Awesome. That's really cool. So let's move on here. So can Aura Sync work with a non-Aura Sync motherboard or non-Aura products?
So that's an interesting question, but one that totally makes sense. You know, there's a lot of you out there who might have older systems. Maybe you have made that upgrade, of course, to the latest and greatest motherboard, right? So two options. You essentially have one is you could consider looking at our latest generation of graphics cards. We're starting to put that into more of our graphics cards where we have an Aura header built onto the actual graphics card.
Right.
So that means that pretty much you have a header just like you have on the motherboard. You install the graphics card, you then store the Aura utility, and then from there you can connect your LED strip, you can connect it to a chassis with integrated lighting, you can connect it to, you know, the fan grills, you can connect to anything.
So that all just plugs right into the graphics card, you don't have to mess with the motherboard.
Exactly, and then you have full essentially Asus Aura Sync control. We're also talking to partners to potentially have product offerings where essentially you can have like an add-in controller card that would go into like a PCIe slot, and then from there. Now those aren't actively available right now, but maybe in the not too distant future you might see those type of solutions. So we are looking to try to be able to offer Aura Sync to previous generation users or users that might be running a different platform. But keep in mind that if you're running a different board, you know, the benefit of Asus Aura Sync is that synchronicity between compatible products.
Definitely, definitely. All right, so next question here. What makes Aura different from other RGB software OEMs?
I think the easiest thing is when you take a look at this site, right? It's just you look at the expansiveness of everything that's offered on this site. And the fact that you have literally like SSDs, power supplies, fans, right? LED strips. Every single device, I mean, when we consider keyboard, mouse, monitor, headset, microphone, right? And then everything inside the chassis, there's no other ecosystem that allows for that level of comprehensiveness in terms of control and synchronization.
Yeah, and even other companies that have RGB software and controllers, those will work with ours as well.
Yeah, so that's,
like
that's a great point.
We've got the Silverstone controller, and those are standalone controllers, but you can plug it into our motherboard.
Exactly, you can interface in. And you take a look at other aspects, you know, like partner companies like Fantex or EK even make compatible water blocks that offer actually Aura support. And then I think you probably look at one of the most interesting things like our API. You know, we've worked to be able to release an open source API, the first really in the industry to be able to allow software developers, game developers, hardware partners to be able to use that API. A great example is Ada64 released their latest version that has mapped in API support for our keyboards and mice.
Yeah, for the Claymore keyboard we've got set up over here with our system.
Exactly, so you could map specific keys to represent different color values depending on what's being detected, like frequency or temperature or different types of trigger points. It's really, really cool.
That's really awesome. All right, let's move on to the next one. And so this is another kind of really specific question. What are the best RGB strips for Aura Sync?
That's a really tricky one. I've built a lot of different systems, a lot of different configurations, and I think it really just comes down to what works right for you, the look and feel, and the cost. So, you know, probably the two most common options, you have your standard 4-pin, and then you've got your addressable LED, so that's one change.
But yeah, this motherboard has both. So it's got two standard and one addressable.
Exactly, so that's great. One's gonna be a little bit more expensive, but give you a little bit more control. But you're gonna have changes, some are magnetic, some also use an adhesive material. Adhesive material works better on chassis, where of course you don't have any metal, so you can't flexibly position it, but in your build here,
it's all metal, so I could just throw it in there and it just sticks wherever I want.
Yeah, and that's really nice for like mounting it up top, or like sometimes going in the bottom, underfill lighting, things like that.
And you can change it around easily.
Yeah,
because the sticky ones, you have to re-stick it, get new tape or whatever.
It can get a little bit more sticky in terms of how you go about working with it. Plus, you have different changes like in terms of the LEDs, like wild field of view and other things like that. So my recommendation is, you know, take a look at what you're trying to achieve, the look and the feel, and also do you want to be able to extend? Not all the different offerings that are available offer extension, but you got companies like, you know, take for instance like Fantex or BitPhoenix or Cable Mods. Theirs have integrated connection options, so if you want to extend things out, that can make it useful. But you know, if maybe you just want one singular line, then you can look for one that doesn't have extensions. But all of those are offered on our website, so you can see what choices are available to you.
Definitely. All right. So the next question is, we already kind of talked about this. What options is there for Aura if you have an older build or motherboard? So you can get the graphics card, or maybe eventually someday a controller.
Exactly, a controller.
Okay. So another one is, Okay, so this one's for you, JJ, specifically. I guess they're all for you, but I'm not really answering any of these, but he's the expert. So what settings do you use in your system at home?
So I've got 2 systems, and it's really easy. I think on my black system, I go with the classic ROG red and black. I've been with the company for almost a decade, so I'm really, really a fan of that classic red and black, and I usually either go static or breathing. I think that just looks killer. And then in my alternate system, which is a white-based system, I really like going with like kind of a bright, clean color. So that one I tend to do white and blue. Sometimes I'll do white and green. Right now it's actually a little bit of a combination where I've got blue and then I've got a kind of like a purple pink for contrast on some of the components.
Nice, awesome. So what motherboard are you using in that white one?
In the white one, it's all Prime all the way, and then of course ROG all the way in the red and black system.
Cool. Yeah, those Primes look really good with the RGB.
Yeah, definitely.
So. All right, so now the last question that we've got here is, what do we have in store for Aura Sync's future?
So we're working.
We kind of touched on that a little bit earlier, but you know.
Yeah, so we're always working on something. If you guys are following us, you guys are checking out everything that we're putting out there. You know that ROG, especially in general, we never stop. And so I think our goal right now is that kind of we've conquered giving you the flexibility to control and synchronize all your components internally and the immediate external items. Well, the next kind of most sensible progression is maybe looking outside more for kind of the desk setup. So we've got some cool kind of lighting here in this desk setup. And so what about the possibility of maybe controlling like maybe your ambient bulbs, right? Or maybe having
smart home integration type stuff.
Exactly, that could be an offering. We also look to continue to keep expanding with that API integration, and that might come not only through updates for software applications, but maybe towards specific type of external controllers or new types of products that we release. Imagine seeing stuff like notifications in real time. Like you're not gaming, but maybe you want to be notified with an LED light when you get a new tweet or when you got a new email, or there's
kind of like how your phone does.
release.
It'll blink a different color.
Exactly.
You know, depending on what type of notification you have.
Yeah, and I think like a lot of things, you know, we spend a huge amount of time to listening to the feedback in the community. You know, a lot of times I talk to our product management team, and it's like 80% of our job is listening to the community, and then 20% of our job is trying to think about that next thing to really blow you guys away. So I think a combination of those two things, you know, you're going to continue to see a lot of cool stuff from Aura Sync in general.
Awesome. Well, thank you very much, JJ. I think we covered just about everything in the new software, and the latest version is just awesome compared to what it was a year ago. So we're constantly making changes and updates to give it the best experience best user experience we possibly can. So I hope this answered a lot of your guys' questions about Aura Sync. If not, go ahead and ask them in the comments section below. And if you're currently using Aura Sync, why don't you let us know, what kind of setup you've got, what's hardware you're using, and what kind of settings you like. So I just want to say thank you very much for watching, and we'll see you next time.